who could be more fair to judge Claude Monet's oeuvre than the French artist himself? Acknowledged by the father of Impressionism as his most beautiful masterpiece, the garden at Giverny, to which he dedicated half of his life, was not only a living canvas in which he used flowers instead of paints, but also the most important subject of his late years paintings. In northern France, when Monet saw the small village of Giverny for the first time from his train window, he fell in love so deeply that he was compelled to rent a house in this French commune, where he moved in 1883 with his large family, his two sons, Jean and Michel, his future second wife, Alice Rochedet, and her 6 children. The property was beside the road. The large path that began at the gate and led to the house was originally lined with cypresses and spruces, which Monet had cut down except for 2 to please Alice, putting a metallic arch and carpeting the ground with nasturtiums and roses. Monet's passion for flowers made him rent a nearby 3-acre field to move all his vegetables there and have his garden fully dedicated to flowers. He replaced the apple trees for Japanese cherries. He planted poppies instead of cabbages and lettuce, and irises and marigolds in replacement of onions. He grew mostly flowering annuals, which had to be replaced every year, but gave colorful blocks of color, and also perennials, double-flowered species such as roses and peonies. Nevertheless, the artist preferred single flowers, tulips, anemones, as they allowed the sunlight to penetrate through their petals, transforming themselves into tiny color-tinted paper lanterns. As with every impressionist, the use of light in his paintings was of extreme importance. This is the reason why he avoided dark flowers. By 1890, Monet, who had finally established himself as a well-known artist, was able to buy the 2-acre house and hire 2 gardeners. Having shared growing tips with fellow Impressionist painter Gustave Caillebotte, Monet also spent a lot of money on exotic plants. These kind of plants were obviously expensive. Nonetheless, Monet invested all the money he earned in his garden, and as his passion for botany grew, so did the varieties of plants. In a short time, his garden would not be enough to satisfy his obsession, and Monet would go to extreme lengths in order to recreate the garden of his dreams. In 1893, Monet was able to acquire the adjacent land to his property at Giverny, which was separated by the railway, where he gave life to an extravagant oriental water garden. For this lush project, not only he had to divert water from a branch of the Epte river, but he also had to stand against his neighbors, as they did not want the water to be contaminated by his exotic plants. Still, in the end, Monet got away with it and was permitted to carry out his plan. Inspired by the Japanese prints he avidly collected, now exhibited in the house, he designed a green wooden footbridge over an artificial pond, surrounded by wisteria vines, bamboo, irises, and different varieties of newly bred water lilies. While at the beginning Monet and his family had taken care of the place themselves, after expanding it and having the resources for hiring full-time gardeners, 7 of them in total, the painter continued to be in charge of the constant redesigning of the garden, giving daily instructions to his gardeners' staff, such as having his beloved water lilies cleaned every morning from the train soot they collected. Precisely, as the garden was not only intended for the pleasure of the eye, but also for motifs to paint, as he said, it was there he found the inspiration for his Japanese fridge and Nymphaea's water lilies series, comprising almost 250 works of art. Monet, keen of portraying the same subject under different lighting weather conditions, painted over and over his water lilies, sometimes using large-scale canvases so that the viewer would feel immersed in his garden in spite of not being physically there. Another obstacle were the cataracts he had developed in both eyes that may have influenced his last year's painting style. After World War I, Monet donated some of the large-scale water lilies paintings to the Musée de l'Orangerie, with his friend Georges Clemenceau, who also happened to be the Prime Minister of France at the time, acting as an intermediary. The 8 panels, measuring nearly 328 linear feet, arranged in 2 oval rooms according to the painter's design, first exhibited a few months after his death. Upon Monet's death, his son Michel inherited the property, but as he did not have any interest in living there, Alice Hochet's daughter, Blanche, who was also Jean Monet's widow, took care of both the house and the garden. Since she was a child, Blanche had been interested in art, taking lessons from Monet and visiting the study of Impressionist artist Edouard Manet. During all those years in Giverny, she had been his stepfather's only student and assistant, often portraying the same subjects with the same palette. It is suspected she also helped him paint some details of the Water Lily series. After her death, the place fell into oblivion. It will not be until after Michel's death in 1966 that efforts were made for the place to look like Monet had intended it to be. Almost 10 years of restoration later, guided by a gardener who had worked alongside Monet, friends that had visited the house in its days of glory, and black and white photographs, a team of horticulturalists could painstakingly bring back to life the colorful gardens. Both the neglected bridge and pond had to be redone completely, although the wisteria surrounding them are still the ones planted by Monet. The garden opened to the public in 1980, and it has been visited by all those who wish to feel inside a Monet painting ever since.